Thank you for coming to this afternoon's session on strategies for exam preparation. This afternoon, I'd like to welcome Dr. Mona Shrestha, who's been with the college for, it seems, a very long time, 8 years. She's been working predominantly in the social science area, and currently she's the acting manager of social science. And also with her today is Dr. Jack Isherwood, who's been with us for 3.5 years and has been working in the social science area, mostly teaching understanding society and working with communities. And his special interest is economic inequality and political polarization. And he too recently has been made a first-year experience coordinator. So congratulations to both of you on that. And now, please.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for your participation. Jack and I would like to share several strategies with you all to prepare students for exam with a particular focus on essay and short answer response. And we'd also like to learn from your experiences, ideas and methods that you use in your classroom. So we hope it comes as handy and timely discussion as the exams are approaching near. Now, out of all these strategies, we would like a few of the activities to be interactive for our discussion as practice in the classroom environment with the students. We're going to start by discussing some common issues faced by students and teachers with respect to exam prep. Then there will be 4 interactive strategies facilitated by Jack and me with John's support. Followed by this, we will briefly provide an overview of the remaining strategies. We'll conclude by discussing some key principles of exam preparation and take an opportunity to share your feedback. One of the first things to prepare the students is to ask them about the key things that they feel that need to be addressed, which can usually be done by brainstorming. So let's start our discussion by brainstorming as well. Here, if you look at the screen, there are 2 topics for discussion. Number 1, what difficulties do you face as teachers in preparing students for exam? Second, what difficulties students face themselves in preparing for exam? We will have about approximately 4 minutes or so for this activity. John, would you mind please organizing the breakout room?
So because we've got a unique situation where Narimba U2 has basically decided to build their own organic breakout room, we're going to let you be a breakout room on your own, and we will ask you to report later to the group, if that's okay.
So thank you very much for all of your contributions. I was thinking maybe we could start with the Narimba group, and maybe you could share your 3 major points that came up in your chat, please.
Well, I would be happy to. Hello, everyone. I was hoping to stay off screen today. So first of all, for teachers, we were looking at, first of all, we said attendance. Seeing one of the main issues for exam preparation is student attendance in week 12. Another main point was also looking at, should we say, equity among teachers? So how much, looking at the difference between teachers, some that might be giving away too much and others that might not be giving away enough. Shall we say the volume as well of the content? I'm trying to pick 3.
You're doing really well.
Thanks for the reassurance. And just the sheer volume. So in terms of revision, what to focus on, knowing obviously what's in the exam and then making decisions in terms of content based around that. So I think those were our top 3, speaking on behalf of our breakout room.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. Some very interesting points there. Negotiating the sheer volume of content, how do you actually prioritize it effectively? And I think we're going to offer some strategies a little bit later that can really help you with that. And I think another thing that you brought up, which was very interesting, is the equity issue. And how do you actually ensure that you're providing, the most benefit to your students when students have different levels of motivation in terms of their prep, when they have different levels of prior, preparation in terms of their knowledge of the content. So yeah, some really interesting points. Thanks so much. Will we turn to another group?
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I was with Stacey and we were talking about the difficulties that we face. We've got to make sure that all the content was actually covered. So if we jump in on the equity part, some content might have been breezed over, but not on purpose, obviously, but by timing over the semester, some content might have been focused on a little bit more than some other content. Also, making sure it aligns with the task. So if you require a longer response, don't give the students a short answer question for that. And making sure the students have the writing skills. They may not be able to write a longer response, or with a short one, they are providing, a regurgitation of the content rather than actually answering the question. So yeah, there's our three.
Yeah, great. No, some really interesting points. And I think it's particularly difficult to prepare students for short answer responses. I found that in the past to be really, really difficult because obviously you have to provide a response that's really precise, really concise. And you've got to think very carefully about the teaching and learning strategies you're going to implement so that you can actually teach them the content, but obviously how to write a really effective response. So thanks so much for that. Agreement, I think that students often find it really difficult to understand the format of the exam. They find it really difficult how to access support resources and obviously how to allocate their time effectively. And often one really major difficulty is that they haven't really been taught effective exam preparation strategies in their previous studies. That means our difficulty is not only to teach them effectively about the content, but really to instruct them about generic studying skills. And of course, students often experience really significant exam anxiety, and that can really impede their motivation to study in a meaningful way. And it also presents us with difficulties in the classroom as well. On the other side of the coin, teaching staff often find it very hard to assuage students' anxieties, to clearly communicate what students need to do in order to successfully prepare them to write an effective exam paper. And of course, to really make them understand the unit concepts and theories, given the short amount of time that we have. So hopefully we'll be able to share with you now some different strategies which can help you to really prepare effectively.
So before we begin, just a quick note here. All of these activities do require preparation in advance and for clear scaffolding to be provided to students so that they understand their instructions precisely. And we would also like to underscore that you can use these strategies throughout the term. They do not have to be confined to the final exam preparation tutorials. Now, playing different games as part of the revision is always popular. One of the games that really works well for me is the secret word. So for this game, the secret word, you can divide the class into 2 groups, and each group should appoint a team member who will try to guess a key concept, a theory or idea decided on, and then described by the rest of the group. So importantly, the teacher has to stress that the students can only use academic language, but they cannot say the actual word or any similar terms. Ideally, you should provide about 20 to 30 minutes of revision preparation time on a particular topic or themes. This can be done in class where the word is projected on the screen. The team member guessing the word will be facing the class and not allowed to look at the screen. So we've got to do it a bit differently here. For this session, John will place a concept or idea on the chart bar, and you all will try to explain it to Jack and me, and we'll try to guess that. And we promise that we're not going to go to chat bar. But the pressure is on you guys that you all have to really explain it well so that we can guess.
It's something you eat.
It's a seasonal food.
Fruit.
Coming soon.
Yeah.
It's sweet. It's
Banana?
usually, yeah, it's very traditional for, is it in Australia?
In certain cultures.
Yeah,
In
I
certain-
want
Yeah.
Yes.
just checking.
Can be served hot or cold and with custard or ice cream.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
It's eaten in the holiday season. Are we allowed
Yeah.
to say that?
Yeah.
The one
Pudding.
Yes.
coming up
The
soon.
one coming up.
The
Christmas
one
pudding.
related to
Hey, keep going, Mona.
One related to, say that really loudly.
you would often have beautiful trees decorated beautifully. Others
Yeah,
silver.
Christmas pudding. It's not that one.
No, it's close.
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 Getting close.
The first part is correct. The second part is
You might also eat a birthday version of
Christmas
yeah,
cake.
or
Oh, what is it?
You got it.
You got
Yes,
it.
you got it.
Okay.
You got it. Do we do a second round?
Yes, and Jack can guess that.
Okay.
Apparently, it's good for your heart.
Good
Good
for
for
lots of things.
Oh.
You can cook with it.
it helps you relax at the end of a long day.
There's a white version as well.
Oh, wine.
It comes in a bottle.
What kind of wine? What kind of wine? Give us more
What kind of
information.
wine?
Red, white.
Red
Rosé.
wine. Thank you. Thank you.
All right,
You got it.
excellent.
So that's a
Cool.
secret word.
Yeah. But it's really good if you know, just to test their knowledge about some theoretical concepts using that. Okay.
So let's try another engaging exam strategy. And these are quizzes. And quizzes obviously allow you to set questions that test students' knowledge of the subject matter. And rather than me elaborating what a quiz is and how it can be used, maybe we can have a quick debate, as I'm sure we've all used quizzes in our classes. What are the advantages and disadvantages of them in the classroom as an exam preparation tool? So maybe we can have 2 minutes for discussion.
In the chat bar, we'd like to see some of the pros and cons.
It's okay. Okay. there.
So yeah, good
Debate
point.
is better
They
than
are fun. They're often really engaging to students. And yeah, I really like that. So it's a really good point. They are a quick indicator of students' knowledge. You can use them as a diagnostic tool effectively to judge whether students really get the content or not. They are time consuming. That's definitely a disadvantage. Slow readers can be challenged, which is an equity issue. That's a very good point too, David. I think that's a good point as well, Stacey. It's true that quiz is really good because it can be a tool to assuage students' anxiety because they can get a sense of what the actual exam format is like. They can actually see for themselves how well they're doing. True, it does support visual learners. Yep, good point, John, as well. It's a good technique to see where students are at. And that's important for you because you can identify where the areas of strength, weakness, so on and so forth. Any other ideas? Yeah, no, it can be used competitively. Yeah, that's a good point, David. So you can really turn it into an interesting game-like situation. I've often given prizes, of course, to people who score the highest in the quiz. So that's really useful.
Yeah, and sometimes when it's very competitive, it's more than really getting the, you know, the clarity of the concept. It becomes a competition just to score. So yeah, that could be disadvantage.
Any other ideas?
There's one there.
Yes, disheartening. That's a good point. That is a disadvantage. You have to be very careful how you communicate the outcome of the quiz because some students might lose motivation effectively or think that they're really behind. So you've got to be really positive and encouraging, I think. So before we move on, maybe we can just wrap up some key points. I think one thing that's really excellent about quizzes as an exam preparation strategy is that you can really break down the unit content as a whole into really digestible chunks. You can really interpret students' existing areas of strength and weakness and then target your learning and subsequently to really focus on those areas of potential weakness. And then you can also use quiz as a very engaging tool. And I think Mona will quickly just summarize some of the disadvantages.
Yeah, some of the disadvantages, like it could be very distracting to students sometimes. Students also might not take it seriously when it becomes, it's like just for the sake of competition. And sometimes they might not also want to participate. We've seen that, like when we run that, not necessarily all the classes would participate. But having said that, but I think there's a lot of advantage in using this as a revision.
Absolutely. So I think one interesting spin on this activity is to get students to draft the quizzes themselves during class. And obviously, this is time saving for teachers because the quizzes could then be self-graded. And it also allows students to really meaningfully engage with the content, both as quiz creators, but also as quiz respondents. So we'll turn to another strategy beyond quizzes now.
The other strategy is that we can use polling. Polling is a really good way to test students' viewpoints on topics and to assess their level of knowledge. Okay, so if you're looking at the screen there, you'll find a statement below there. Exams are a fair and effective way to judge student knowledge. So we're going to do the polling in this, and John is going to ask you to participate in the polling around this question. So could you please, all of you? Majority do believe that it's a fair judgment, but it's also divided. Some people are unsure. So amongst ourselves, it's sort of, we have different views, and it's a really good way of trying to get the ideas, what students are thinking, and to really elaborate on the reasons behind that. This method of polling can be used particularly like in your class before and after the lesson, which is really effective for a comparison of students' views and reflection. It is particularly useful if you're trying to teach something new, which might challenge their thinking. So sometime in sociology class, if you're asking, would education bring social inequality, teachers, most of the students would say no, and once you've gone through, at the end it might swing. So, and you can find out what they've learned and why.
X is another potentially very useful exam prep strategy. It's an activity where basically you divide a topic into different components or different segments, and you task students to reorganize that information in a more coherent, organized way. And this is a really useful activity because it really encourages students to actively collaborate and to exchange information, because all of them have a partial understanding of the topic, and then to actually reorganize that in a really systemic and logical and ordered way. So it's particularly useful, I think, when the amount of knowledge on the topic is really distributed across the classroom as a whole. And you can really use particular areas of student strength. They can share their different opinions.
Okay, student debates are also really good alternative strategy. And as you all know, there are different types of debates. It could be structured or unstructured. They can also be arranged in different formats. Some debates aim towards consensus, while other debates might be about stressing points of disagreement, like, for example, playing the devil's advocate role. They can expose students to different perspectives on a topic and can encourage them to form cohesive positions on a subject.
And another really useful strategy is student presentations. And student presentations obviously provide a space where students can research unit concepts and theories in considerable depth. And then they actually need to organize this information in a way that's relatable to their fellow classmates. And they're really good because I think they can help to improve student gaps in their knowledge, but also reducing their anxiety because you're actually encouraging them to organize information in a really coherent, meaningful way.
Now, another strategy you all will be aware of already is the use of mock exams. Mock exams are useful exam preparation strategy because first, it introduces students to the format of the exam, thereby reducing their anxiety. Second, it allows teachers to identify areas of strength and weaknesses, allowing them to refine their revision activities more carefully. So for this activity to be successful, you need to pose questions which are similar to the actual paper, and for students to be provided with clear instructions about how they are supposed to answer the questions.
So let's turn to another strategy called the jigsaw. This activity consists of teachers dividing a broader topic into different parts and allocating a part of that general topic to students, to specific groups of students, and requiring them to perform a learning activity that really helps them to improve their knowledge of that particular part of the subject area. So for example, you could allocate them to do a more generalized brainstorm of a topic, and that's particularly good as an ice-breaking activity. Or you could get them to research a specific part of that general area and get them to do a classroom presentation on that specific part. And the advantage of this activity is that obviously they're exposed to a broad variety of different topics within the curriculum area. And it's obviously very engaging for students. And for this activity to work properly, you do need to make sure that you provide very clear, explicit instructions. And you really need to make sure to summarize the main key points at the end of their discussion, so that students are really forging the connection between the specific part that they studied and the general picture, and they understand the connections between the different elements within the topic.
Another strategy is the round robin. Now, round robin is a collaborative activity where students share a small piece of information in a rapid and round order. This activity involves rearranging the classroom so that students are sitting in a circle, and ask students to build on the point that the last students made until everyone around the circle has made a point. This sharing of information can be done verbally, or it can be, you can use the index cards or a piece of paper where students can write their contribution. This is quite a good activity for students because it is engaging and often very humorous as well, and can be really good feed-in activity to other exam preparation strategies. It is also very time effective. For this activity to be successful, make sure to provide students with clear instructions and to encourage active participation.
Thanks, Verna. So interviews are a different way of preparing students for an exam. An interview, as you know, is a situation where you have pre-designed questions and you're trying to elicit key insights from the respondent. The good thing about an interview in the context of exam preparation is that they can be designed in many different ways. So you can use many different types of interview questions, structured versus unstructured. And what you're really prioritizing is students learning from each other, rather than being placed in a dependent position in relation to their teacher. So for this activity to be successful, you need to model some key principles of good interview questions, because it's a dialogical activity. And you need to be willing to provide extra assistance to students who might feel a little bit anxious about asking or responding to some of these questions.
Thanks, Jack. The other one, sticky notes. Most of us have used this. Sticky notes are a similar activity to the round robin, but with one important difference here. The sticky notes activity simply involves getting students to write responses on a sticky note and to post it somewhere in the class. This activity requires the teacher to allocate a particular issue or problem, and students then write a response on a sticky note and attach it to a space in the classroom. This activity has the advantage that it allows students to share their opinions on an issue relatively anonymously, while also exposing them to diverse perspectives on a topic. Again, for this activity to work effectively, please make sure to provide clear expectations about language use and make sure to summarize the key points across the different contributions. Jack?
So another approach is teaching meta skills, and this came up a little bit early in our discussion, where we need to not only teach the content, but also teach them the more generic transferable skills of exam preparation. And this activity allows students to learn from each other about what strategies in terms of exam preparation have worked really meaningfully for them in the past. And it allows students to have a space where they can share their insights on how they could improve their exam preparation techniques into the future. And I think this is a really powerful technique in reducing student anxiety. And you're also teaching them practical studying skills because their fellow students are modeling what worked for them successfully in the past. So this activity works well if you really encourage students to share their ideas actively, and if you provide them with some explicit guidance about how they should actually participate in the activity.
So let's move on to another exam preparation strategy, which can help us address, again, the exam preparation, the use of case studies. Case studies are a very effective tool for helping students to engage in depth with particular concepts and theories and to link them to developments or issues in the real world. This can be particularly useful in context of developing students' knowledge in response to an essay or short answer type questions. Now, case studies work well if they are specific and relatable to students' lived experiences, if they can be clearly connected to unit concepts and theories, and if they are pitched at the right level of complexity.
So this is a think, pair, share activity, and this activity gets students obviously to think about a particular topic individually by themselves before sharing their insights in a pair or a very small group. And eventually that builds up into a class-wide discussion where they're sharing their contribution. And I think this activity is really useful in the context of getting students to think about a topic which they might not feel very confident about, or where they only have an incomplete picture of the topic as a whole. And this activity really relies on students sharing their partial knowledge together. And they go through different stages where they actually start forming more complex and integrated understanding of the general topic and subject area as a whole. So this activity works really well. Obviously, if you create a positive environment where you're really encouraging and rewarding students sharing their contributions, and if you take the time to reinforce some of the most insightful observations made by students on the topic.
Finally, the mind dump works on a similar principle to sticky notes and round-robin activity. A mind dump is a simple activity which encourages students to contribute their knowledge with their classmates in a very relaxed and general and non-specific way. So this activity is very useful for teachers who want to gauge the level of knowledge students have about a particular topic, and students often find this activity to be engaging. It can also help students categorize diverse perspectives on a topic in a more coherent way. This activity again works really well if you create a positive classroom environment, and it is particularly effective as an opening ice-breaking activity.
Thanks, Mona. So let's try and wrap up our discussion here by sharing some key principles for supporting students in the context of their exam preparation. So firstly, it's very important to communicate effectively with students, obviously, ideally both verbally in class, but also in writing afterwards, about what your specific boundaries are in terms of offering guidance and assistance to them. And our role ultimately is to support students to be self-directed and self-motivated learners, not dependent on us for their exam preparation. We're supposed to guide them in terms of how they can prepare effectively and really give them insight into some key points regarding unit concepts and theories. The second important principle is to create a supportive learning environment, set high but realistic expectations from your students, encourage them to see the exam as a learning opportunity and a chance to demonstrate their skills, their abilities, their talents. And I think it's very important as well as educators that we place the exam within its proper context so that you're trying to assuage some of their anxiety. And I think one thing that came up a little bit earlier in the conversation that you had was that difficult question of how do you actually divvy up the entire unit in terms of exam prep, because realistically you can't cover everything in a very meaningful way. So I think what you need to do is to carefully map out your classroom activities so that students receive the most amount of benefit from your expertise and your knowledge on the really essential unit concepts and theories that are relevant to the exam paper.
Thanks, Jack. And finally, you can try to reduce student anxiety and your own workload by integrating the preparatory strategies across the term. For example, you could use the views announcements to encourage students to revise content throughout the term. I know most of us do that. You could integrate skills necessary for exam preparation into your weekly classes. Example, to do the activities which help students with their time management. And finally, you could consider using feedback tools. I personally like online reflective journal or also Google Forms, so that you can gain insight and feedback during the term about areas of student content knowledge, allowing you to go into your final exam preparation tutorial with a very clear sense of what is vital to focus on.
So before we go, I wanted to thank you very much for your participation in the webinar. It's really important, obviously, that these webinars are relevant and they're useful to your professional development. So we were wondering, please, whether which strategy have you not tried before, but you would be really keen to try out in the classroom? Does anyone have a particular strategy that really appealed to them?
Like the secret word, I can see that work really well in the units I teach.
Why did you see the secret word being an interesting option, Lorraine?
The fact that it allows for different ability levels to all participate, and the fun factor.
And that's right, Lauren. I've used that number of times in my units. That always is a very popular game, and students do take it very seriously. What I didn't say is in that when you are the other group actually also has a marking criteria assessment, so you can assess how they are doing. So it's a very good way.
Is there any other observations or activities people would like to discuss?
I think I've probably covered the bulk of these over various subjects over many years. I do know class debates tend to not work. The students are essentially coming to the tutorial wanting the quick, here's the overview of the information, then they go away and read. So when we say, okay, we want you to engage in the debate, a lot of them just sit back and it ends up being between two students. So I think I think it works on the size of the class as well. Some are going to be more appropriate for larger groups and some are going to be more appropriate for your smaller groups. I do like the polling. Go Soapbox allows the polling as well as a way to do the sticky notes without the actual sticky notes, because they can put their opinion forth and they don't have to put their name if they don't want to. They can put a nickname or their student number or something like that. So it's good for the students who don't wish to speak up, put their hand up, or they want to put forth an opinion that may not be so desirable, but they feel like theirs is a good opinion. Yeah, that's what I've got so far.
Good mark, Sarah. You've been paying attention. Thank you.
Could I just add a comment on Sarah's perspective there? Because I think you've raised a really interesting point about debates. And I do share that hesitation about using the classroom, because there's nothing worse than engaging in a debate and the students clearly aren't motivated. They're not enjoying it. In fact, they actually find it very anxiety inducing. And I think that's quite tragic, because debates are a very powerful tool in exam preparation, particularly for comparative questions. So, for example, in understanding society, we often have questions that try and compare, the functionist versus the conflict theory perspective on religion. And I think one way that you can address that concern is actually maybe spacing out the activity over 2 tutorials. So maybe you have part of one tutorial that really focuses on students forming an understanding of potential points. And then you're actually, pre-preparing them for the debate. And then in the actual follow-up tutorial, you set very clear guidance about, how they should respond, what kind of language they should use, what's the order of the debates, what type of debate is it? Are you trying to reach agreement? Are you trying to, hash out the main points of difference? So I think you do have to invest a lot of effort into the.
Unfortunately, in some of them in 50 minutes, you can't really sort of get that. And then the following week, you've got another topic or another theory. And
yes.
I know we've got to be quite mindful of the time. That's why the electronic ones tend to be I guess, not to say it's less work on our behalf, but it doesn't require as much input from the students, so they might be more likely to engage, because if they don't understand the content, it'll feel like a wall that they've got to try and get over.
I just wanted to ask all the participants also, are there any strategies not discussed here which have worked really well for you?
I wanted to add something, and I'm sorry my video disappeared. That's never happened to me before. But I just wanted to add something coming from an e-learning person, that I thought the post-it notes, sorry Mona, I'm not answering your question, I'll be quick. The post-it notes are a quick way for us to just come into the classroom kind of spontaneously and use it as a tool, check in with the students and see how they're going. I think it's quick and easy and very effective, and I've never used it before, so I think it's a great one. Sorry, Mona, to interrupt.
No, not at all. Thanks for that.
I like the idea that you start very early in looking at the meta skills for exam preparation. So you actually, one of the concerns I had for all of the strategies that you suggested was they were all, not all of them, but the student has to make the leap between the activity that you're actually doing and the actual fact that when they're in an exam, they'll be sitting down and answering a question. And so while I can see the opportunity, the value in the engagement strategy that you're using, and I can see the value in all of the different techniques, I would think that every time you get a chance to actually model what it's like to actually complete an exam and respond to questions, they're very effective, so that you're breaking down the anxiety early on. So that those meta skills, and also you're getting them to the point where you're activating their prior learning and building that as you go. The other thing I was going to say was, what was it about? It's lost. It's gone.
If I can add in answer to Mona's question, there's something that's worked really well. You've mentioned it. You talked about the quizzes, but we recently were introduced to Quizlet Live by Hannah that brought it into our unit. That's been a fantastic tool. So it's a version of a quiz, but having the students sit there and try several times to identify the correct answers really helps them with memorizing content. So when you have that and they really need to know the definition or they need to understand the terms, that's a very powerful technique. You mentioned the mock exam that David also touched on. That's really helpful. And I don't know if this really, where this would fit, but we're very fortunate to have a class test the week or two before the exam, and we actually start preparing then. So it's not, it's an assessment that was built in to actually give them real feedback on where they're at with the main concept. So that's been really useful to include in our unit, which is a content-heavy unit.
Lorraine, do the students actually pose questions themselves or in Quizlet, or are the questions always from the teacher?
It has various options. That's why I love Quizlet, and then they're given to them. That reminds me, if I can just quickly add, I actually like that very much as a technique that you and Jack introduced as well, to let students come up with the exam questions that they believe should be in there. I'm very excited to go and try that in our unit at the next possible opportunity, because that will really give me some insight into how well they understand the main objectives for each week and so on.
There's two parts to what Lorraine said. One is, if a student's being asked to pose questions that to put in the exam, they're more likely to pose questions for which they know the answer. But if you ask them to pose questions for things that they're not clear about, then you'll actually get more useful information out of the question.
I think also, we get a lot of students who feel that they're no good at exams. They've already not done well in exams. That's their experience in exams. They haven't managed to do very well, and they come with that baggage and that preconception before they do these exams that they can't do them. They're rubbish at exams. And I think being explicit about some of those strategies, like what you're actually aiming to do with some of those games, whether you do it before or after, I don't think that's so important. But I think also with the exam anxiety, there's some students who really want to do well, they haven't done one in the past, and we're playing a game. They can't. It's about managing their expectations as well of the teacher, and thinking, trying to show them that games are not a waste of time, and actually games are really helpful. And I think we can battle that sometimes. I mean, most of the students love games, but the very serious ones who feel they've failed in the past and want to get it right now might feel that that's a waste of time. But,
yeah, that's a really good point, and that's actually something that hasn't popped up in our last discussion. So I think it does. I'm a bit divided whether you should do it before or after. I think probably before might be a bit better.
And Jack, aren't they all? Wouldn't they all be modes of formative assessment? I mean, the exam is the mode of summative assessment. I could see all of those techniques being really valuable tools for the teacher in terms of formative assessment throughout the term, which is, in fact, in my view, far more valuable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with you, Trish.
That's good. But, having this discussion, I was also wondering, are there any strategies that we didn't discuss here which have worked really well for you in the past that any of you would like to share?
well, someone I used today in class, I didn't make it, I'm not taking credit for this, but did the Jeopardy game, and I don't even know how to set it up. But it worked so well today, because there were some students who attended today that haven't been around very much, and in the easy questions, the 50-point questions, and others were trying the 300s, and I don't know, it just worked really well because there was something for everyone. But I don't know how to set it up on PowerPoint. So again, that's another lack of my technology. Yeah, it worked really well.
It is good, yeah. I've actually got the students to write the questions. So if you were what's your ideal exam? Let's write the questions. And then I've said, that's interesting. Why didn't we ask these questions? And that was a way of me finding out what they didn't know.
That's a really clever technique.
Really good.
They didn't know that at the time.
I know. To also understand what student we're thinking about.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
Jack, Mona, thank you very much for the time that you put into preparing this. It was certainly a bit of an ask on your part, but I think it's really important for you bringing us together as a community of practice. And we hope to see all the participants again in the near future in one of our future webinars. Have a nice evening. So this is the end of the recording.